March 12, 1943, Ravensbrück concentration camp, pre-dawn. A whistle sliced through the frozen air like a blade. Women jolted awake inside Block 3-2, not from sleep, but from a thin, shivering drift, somewhere between exhaustion and unconsciousness. Frost clung to their hair. Their breath rose in soft, ghost-like clouds. Outside, boots marched in perfect rhythm across the gravel. And then the shouting began. An SS overseer slammed the butt of his rifle against the door. "Rouse, all of you, now!" The women scrambled, some barefoot, shoulders trembling, thin uniforms barely clinging to their bodies. A few clutched each other for balance. Most had long since forgotten the sensation of warm hands. Among them was a Polish resistance courier named Wanda Półtawska, 20 years old, starving, and covered in bruises that never healed because the beatings never stopped. As she staggered into the courtyard, the icy ground bit into her skin like broken glass. The guards laughed. One of them, Oberofficerin Greta Bosel, smirked as she paced in front of the shivering line. "Look at them," she mocked, waving a black-gloved hand. "Pathetic. Useless. Not even fit for dogs." Another SS woman, her breath turning white in the air, added, "They break faster than the men. Every time." The guards believed this deeply. Women, to them, were weak, fragile, emotionally unstable, not built for punishment. Their job, as the SS saw it, was simply to process them like livestock and watch them disappear. But on this morning, something was different. Hunger had carved harsh lines into every prisoner's face. Yet the line didn't waver. Not a single woman stepped out of formation. Not a single woman cried. There was a quiet defiance in their silence. Something unspoken but unmistakable. The guards felt it, and they didn't like it. As the roll call dragged on, Wanda blinked into the darkness, her vision shaking with cold. Behind the guards, she could see the faint outlines of the Ravensbrück medical barracks, the place where unspeakable experiments were carried out. She had heard whispers, bone removal, muscle carving, injections that made skin rot, surgeries without anesthesia. Women turned into lab material. Every instinct in her body screamed to run, but she didn't move, because Wanda knew something the guards did not. She hadn't survived the Gestapo, the interrogation cells, and the transport trains just to die here. There was one last thing she carried with her from the resistance: will. Not bravado. Not anger, not strength in the physical sense. Something deeper. Something the guards had never considered. Across the yard, a young SS doctor stepped outside, flipping through a clipboard. He moved down the line, slowly, measuring faces, looking for subjects. Wanda felt her heart hammer. His shadow crept closer. And in that moment, that silent, frozen moment, she made a decision that would change everything. She would not die on their terms. The doctor lifted his hand about to point at her, but then he paused, eyes narrowing as if sensing that something about this woman was different. He turned away. Wanda's breath trembled, not from relief, but from the knowledge that this escape was temporary. Tomorrow might be another story. And deep inside Ravensbrück, in a place she had not yet seen, the SS doctors were preparing something new, something worse. Something they believed no woman could survive. But they were wrong. Terribly wrong. And Wanda, along with dozens of other useless women, was about to prove it. Snowmelt dripped from the roofs in thin, sluggish lines as the morning roll call ended. The prisoners dispersed like shadows breaking apart, some driven towards work details, others toward the weaving sheds, the kitchens, or the quarry. Wanda remained standing, her legs trembling beneath her. A guard shoved her shoulder. "Move." She stumbled forward, her body aching from cold and starvation. But as she walked, she noticed something that made her breath catch. 2 SS nurses, white coats stiff in the wind, were walking down the row of women, a list in hand. Names, whispered like death sentences. One prisoner after another was plucked from the line and marched toward the medical barracks. A few collapsed in terror. Most didn't have the strength. Wanda watched their faces, the hollow eyes, the silent prayers, the resigned expressions of women who knew what awaited them. Some women returned, limping, infected, or unable to stand. Others never returned at all. Wanda swallowed hard. For a moment, she allowed herself to believe she might avoid it. But then a nurse pointed directly at her. "You..." Step forward. Wanda felt her stomach drop as if the ground had been ripped out beneath her. Two guards seized her arms. She didn't fight, she couldn't, but she also refused to collapse. Her feet dragged across the gravel as they pulled her toward the low, grey building at the edge of the camp, the infirmary that the prisoners had begun to call the cutting house. Inside, the warmth hit her first, a sickening, artificial warmth that made sweat rise on her skin even as her bones still ached from the cold. The smell came next. Disinfectant, blood, burnt cloth, rotting flesh hidden poorly behind closed doors. A surgical lamp cast harsh white light across metal tables stained with old rust, or something darker. On one table lay a woman from the Czech resistance, her calf wrapped in gauze soaked red. She stared at Wanda with glassy eyes, lips trembling. "Don't scream," she whispered. "They like that." A chill ran down Wanda's spine. At the far end of the room, two SS doctors argued in sharp-clipped German about sodium carbonate dosages and bone depth measurements. One of them, tall, angular, his glasses fogged by steam, glanced toward Wanda. "Another strong one," he muttered. "Good. We need a control subject." Wanda wanted to laugh. She felt like she could barely stand. But in the eyes of the SS, she had survived too long. And she was forced onto a steel table, straps cinched around her wrists and ankles, leather bit into her skin. A nurse scribbled notes beside her. "Polish courier, age approximately 20, resistant to prolonged starvation, no signs of mental breakdown." Wanda closed her eyes. She could hear the clink of metal trays, the slow, deliberate steps of the doctor approaching. Gloves tightening, liquid filling a syringe, a scalpel being set down on steel, and then begin. Her eyes flew open. Pain tore through her leg like white fire. She tried not to scream, not because of pride, but because she refused to give them the satisfaction. But the pain was unlike anything she had ever imagined. Every nerve in her body lit up. Every muscle jerked against the straps. The doctor carved deliberately, methodically, like he was sketching a map. Her breath came in gasps, her vision blurred. For a moment, she thought she might die. And then, she didn't. Minutes or hours, she couldn't tell, passed, but she did not lose consciousness. Her heartbeat hammered on. The pain continued, but so did she. One of the nurses frowned. "She's still awake?" Minutes or hours, she couldn't tell, passed, but she did not lose consciousness. Her heartbeat hammered on. The pain continued, but so did she. One of the nurses frowned. "She's still awake." The doctor wiped sweat from his brow. "Good. Then we can proceed with the second phase." Wanda's mind screamed. "What second phase?" A tray was lifted, another instrument prepared. A new kind of terror coiled in her chest. And then the door burst open, a guard running in, breathless. "Doctor, Commandant Suren is requesting you." "Now." The doctor cursed, frustrated. He signaled for Wanda to be taken to a recovery cell. "We'll finish later," he said coldly. But something had changed. She had survived the first procedure without fainting, something the SS rarely witnessed. The nurses exchanged uneasy looks, and as Wanda was dragged down the hallway, leaving a faint trail of blood behind her, she realized this was only the beginning. The true test, the one that would challenge everything the Gua. And as Wanda was dragged down the hallway, leaving a faint trail of blood behind her, she realized this was only the beginning. The true test, the one that would challenge everything the guards believed about women. They threw Wanda into a concrete cell no wider than a closet. The door slammed shut with a metallic echo that swallowed the room whole. For a moment, she didn't move. Her breath came in shallow, uneven pulses. Blood soaked through the rough cloth strapped to her leg. The pain throbbed in waves that felt almost alive, crawling up her thigh and into her spine. The cell smelled of mold and iron. The air was damp enough to taste. Somewhere in the darkness, a woman whispered, "Another one?" Wanda blinked, vision swimming. Two figures sat huddled in the shadows, skin grey, hair patchy, eyes hollow, their legs wrapped in bandages just like hers. They were alive, Just barely. One of them scooted closer, her voice soft but steady. "You're Polish?" Wanda nodded. "Resistance courier," she whispered back. The woman's expression shifted. Not pride, not sympathy, something deeper. "You're one of us, then?" Wanda frowned through the pain. "One of who?" The second woman lifted her bandaged leg slightly, revealing the torn, discolored flesh underneath. The result of another operation, another experiment. "The rabbits," she said. Wanda had heard the term whispered in passing. She thought it was rumor, exaggeration, something invented to make sense of the madness. But here, in the cold dark of the recovery cell, she saw the truth. These women weren't just prisoners. They were subjects in a systematic experiment, one aimed at proving German medical superiority by destroying the bodies of those considered subhuman. Bone excision, muscle transplant, infection trials. The SS wanted to recreate battlefield wounds to test new treatments for German soldiers. And women they considered frail and disposable, were the tools. But somehow, impossibly, these frail women were surviving. The first woman leaned closer to Wanda, lowering her voice. "They think we're weak," she said, her eyes glinting. "But we are still here." The words hit Wanda like a spark striking dry kindling. In this room full of pain and death, she felt a slow burn of something she hadn't felt since her capture: defiance. The second woman continued, "They carved out parts of my leg. I couldn't walk for days. They said I'd die of infection within a week." She smiled, a small, sharp smile. "I didn't." Wanda tightened her fists. The straps over her wrists had left angry red marks, but she felt stronger than she had minutes before. Another voice, weak but clear, drifted from the cell next door. "We survived things soldiers couldn't," it said. "Men broke, we didn't." Wanda listened. Dozens of women had endured the same agonies. Some had been operated on multiple times. Some had lost muscle. Some had had bones removed entirely. And yet, here, some had lost muscle. Some had had bones removed entirely. And yet, here they were. Alive. Barely, but undeniably alive. That realization spread through the room like a silent, shared victory. Because every woman who survived an experiment forced the SS doctors to confront a truth they hated. Their victims were stronger than their theories. For days, Wanda lay in that cell, feverish and shaking, her legs swollen with infection. Every hour brought a new wave of pain. There were moments she thought the fever would consume her entirely, but she held on. Through the crack in the door, she could hear guards whispering during shifts. How was she still alive? Impossible. Not even the male subjects lasted this long. Are the Poles made of iron? It was the first time Wanda sensed fear in their voices. Not fear of her, fear of their failure. Fear that the women they had mocked, the useless ones, were defying every expectation. Fear that the women they had mocked, the useless ones, were defying every expectation. On the fourth night the fever broke. Sweat drenched her thin shirt, and her body shivered uncontrollably. But the infection retreated. Wanda opened her eyes, breathing slowly, painfully, triumphantly. The first woman beside her whispered, "You made it." Wanda swallowed, her throat raw. "How long was I out?" "Long enough," she said softly. "Long enough for the guards to start talking." Wanda turned her head. "What are they saying?" The woman smiled again, but this time it was tired and full of something like pride. "They say the women of Ravensbrück don't die like they're supposed to." A chill ran through Wanda's body, not of fear, but of something powerful rising. A whispered legend was taking shape inside the camp, one the guards could not ignore, one the SS doctors could not explain, one the prisoners clung to like a lifeline. Wanda realized then, the more the women survived, the more they endured. The more they defied the experiments, the more they threatened the myth of Aryan dominance. The guards had mocked them. The doctors had underestimated them. But now the camp was beginning to see them differently. And Wanda was about to face the moment that would cement this legend. A moment no one could have predicted. The morning her bandages were removed, Wanda could feel the tension radiating from the medical block before she even entered it. Guards paced faster, Nurses muttered under their breath. The air felt thick, unsettled. Something was wrong. She was escorted down the long, cold corridor toward a room she had never seen before. A room reserved for procedures that required full documentation, the kind the SS expected to make history. 2 doctors stood waiting, clipboards in hand. One of them, Dr. Shidlowski, adjusted his glasses as Wanda entered. He didn't look angry. He looked curious, as if she were an anomaly he looked curious, as if she were an anomaly he was desperate to solve. "Sit," he ordered, pointing to a wooden stool bolted to the floor. Wanda obeyed, though every muscle screamed. Her leg throbbed with each heartbeat. A nurse peeled away her bandages. The wound beneath was hideous, jagged, swollen, stitched crudely with thick black thread. Pus lingered along the edges. The skin was purple and blistered. Yet it was healing. Against all odds, it was healing. The doctor stared at her leg as if it defied mathematics. Dr. Shidlowski leaned closer. "Infection should have spread. Necrosis should have set in by now," he murmured. He shot a sharp look at the nurse. "Are you certain she wasn't given extra rations?" The nurse shook her head quickly. "No, Herr Doctor. She received nothing." "Then how?" He stepped back, baffled. The second doctor, Dr. Gebhardt's assistant from Hohenlichen, examined Wanda with a colder gaze. "Perhaps she is a statistical outlier," he said. His tone was clinical, dismissive. "But we can test that." Wanda's stomach tightened. Test. The word meant pain. Experimentation. Another attempt to break her. The assistant doctor signaled the guards. "Prepare her for the endurance." Wanda's breath hitched. She was dragged towards another room, one she'd only heard described in whispers. The endurance chamber. It wasn't a chamber at all, but a sealed room with a single hanging light bulb, a table covered in surgical instruments, and a drain in the floor. Guards strapped her wrists to iron hooks dangling from the ceiling. Her feet barely touched the ground. She could feel the tremor of fear rise in her chest, but she forced it down. 2 doctors and 3 SS guards stood watching her like spectators before a performance. "This subject," the assistant doctor began, tapping his clipboard, "has demonstrated unexpected tolerance to surgical trauma. The next trial will determine her true threshold." A nurse brought over a tray. Wanda saw the instruments, sharp, rusted, still stained from previous subjects. The doctor approached her slowly. "Tell me," he said softly, "do you fear death?" Wanda met his gaze. Her voice was barely more than a breath. "No." His smile faded. He lifted an instrument, a long metal probe curved at the tip. "This will determine whether you speak the truth." The first stab of pain ripped through her leg so fast she didn't have time to scream. Her body convulsed against the chains. The guards watched with detached fascination. The doctor worked the probe deeper, twisting, testing the wound, assessing her reaction. Wanda tasted blood where she bit her lip. Her vision blurred. Her body shook uncontrollably. But she did not pass out. Minutes passed, then more. The doctor grew frustrated. "She should have collapsed by now," he snapped. The assistant doctor approached, annoyed. Minutes passed, then more. The doctor grew frustrated. "She should have collapsed by now," he snapped. The assistant doctor approached, annoyed. "Increase the pressure." He did. Wanda felt a tearing sensation, a brutal pulling from deep inside her leg. Her head pounded, her heart hammered. Still, she stayed upright, suspended by shaking shoulders, refusing to fall into the oblivion they wanted for her. A guard muttered, "Unbelievable." Another crossed himself, a gesture forbidden, punished if noticed. The assistant doctor slammed his clipboard on the table. "This isn't possible," he snarled. "She should be unconscious." Wanda lifted her head slowly. Her eyes were glassy. Her voice came out cracked. "You can't break me." The room went silent. The guards stared, unsure whether they had heard correctly. The assistant doctor stepped closer, jaw clenched. "What did you say?" Wanda's breath shuddered. She forced the words out. "You will not break any of us." The doctor slapped her so high. "You can't break me." The room went silent. The guards stared, unsure whether they had heard correctly. The assistant doctor stepped closer, jaw clenched. "What did you say?" Wanda's breath shuddered. She forced the words out. "You will not break any of us." The doctor slapped her so hard her head snapped sideways. But the moment was already done, because in that room, under that light, with the smell of blood thick in the air, something shifted. The guards had always mocked the women. The doctors had dismissed them as the entire system believed female prisoners were weak, fragile, easy to destroy. But now Wanda had shown them something they had never seen. A woman who endured everything and refused to bow. The assistant doctor turned away, furious. "Take her back," he spat. "We will reassess later." The guards unhooked her chains. She collapsed to the floor, a heap of pain, sweat, and torn flesh. But she was alive. She collapsed to the floor, a heap of pain, sweat, and torn flesh. But she was alive. And more importantly, she had shaken them. As they dragged her from the room, one guard whispered to another, "If this is what the women are like, what have we created here?" Wanda's vision dimmed, but she heard it. She heard every word. Because this was the moment, the exact turning point, when Ravensbrück guards stopped laughing and started fearing what these women could endure. The SS still had one final test planned for Wanda. One no prisoner had ever returned from, and it was coming sooner than she realized. The next morning arrived without warning. No whistle, no shouted orders, no boots slamming against concrete, just silence. A strange, uneasy silence that settled over Ravensbrück like fog. Well, Wanda woke on the floor of the recovery cell, her leg throbbing, her body weak from blood loss and fever. But something felt different. The air tasted sharper. The guards' footsteps were heavier. The nurses moved faster, their expressions tight and hurried. The other women noticed it too. One whispered, "They're preparing a transport." Wanda's eyes widened. Not a work transport, not a reassignment, a medical transport, the kind the prisoners never returned from. In Ravensbrück, it had a name that rippled through the blocks like a curse. The Dawns. Because the trucks always left at dawn, and the women inside them always disappeared. Some were sent to other camps for continued experiments. Some were taken to secret facilities where the procedures were lethal by design. Some were used to test new chemical agents or high-dose infection treatments. Not a single woman had ever come back. As Wanda struggled to sit up, the cell door clanged open. 2 SS guards entered, flanked by a medical orderly holding a clipboard thick with names. He looked down at the list, then at Wanda. "You up." The other women froze. No one spoke, no one breathed. One of them reached for Wanda's hand, squeezing it once, a silent goodbye. The guards hauled Wanda to her feet. She swayed, but did not fall. Her leg buckled. They yanked her upright again. Outside the cell, snow fell in thin, drifting flakes. A truck idled near the barracks, its canvas cover tied tight over the back. Black smoke curled from the exhaust. The driver stared straight ahead, not daring to look at the women being selected. A line had formed. 20 women, each limping, bandaged, or barely conscious. They were failed experiments, the ones the doctors no longer needed, or no longer believed could survive. Wanda was pushed into the line. The nurse whispered to a guard. She lasted longer than expected. "Gebhardt will want full documentation when she arrives." Arrives where? Wanda didn't need to ask. The rumors had been enough. A secret medical wing outside the camp, run by Dr. Karl Gebhardt himself, Himmler's personal surgeon. The place where survival wasn't the goal, it was the variable. The guard shoved Wanda forward. Every step hurt, but she forced herself to walk with her back straight, her jaw tight. Survive. Survive one more moment, one more breath. As the line inched closer to the truck, the wind shifted, carrying with it a faint sound from the far side of the camp. A whistle. A short, sharp signal. The guards stiffened. Another whistle. This one closer. Then shouts exploded across the yard. Wanda turned her head in time to see SS women rushing toward the east gate. Rifles raised, their voices urgent. "What's happening?" A guard barked. A second guard pointed. "Escape. Block 10. Someone got out." A ripple of chaos tore through the camp. Guards abandoned the line. Prisoners were shoved aside. The truck engine revved. then sputtered as the driver stepped out to see what the shouting was about. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, the guard's attention was somewhere else. The women in the transport line looked at each other. Not in hope, in instinct. A single raw instinct. Now. Wanda felt it like a pulse in the air. The woman next to her, a Latvian seamstress with a crushed arm, whispered, "Run!" Wanda's body screamed in protest, but her mind was already moving. She stumbled backward into the shadows between the barracks. No one noticed. Not with the commotion exploding across the yard. She crouched behind a stack of frozen laundry bins, breathing hard, fighting the urge to collapse. Another prisoner ducked behind her. Then another. 5, 10, all slipping into the cracks as the guards sprinted toward the disturbance. This wasn't an organized escape. It was chaos-born survival. And Wanda was in the middle of it. She pressed against the cold wall, her leg trembling uncontrollably. Blood seeped through her bandage. But she stayed quiet. A guard ran past shouting, "We need every available unit. The commandant wants the perimeter sealed. Gone." All of them. Every guard who had been watching the transport line, gone. Wanda peeked around the corner. The truck, the one meant to take her to the place no woman returned from, sat unguarded, its back flap swinging open in the wind. The line had scattered. The guards had lost control. For the first time since her arrival, Wanda saw it. Fear in the SS. Not fear of the prisoners. Fear of failure. Fear of chaos. Fear of losing control over a system built on brutality and precision. And that was the moment, the exact moment Wanda understood. She had survived everything they tried to destroy her with. Not just because she was strong, but because she refused to let the world forget what happened here. She stepped outside and into the cold, limping past the smoke-stained wall, the camp awakening around her in chaotic shouts and panicked orders. A spotlight swept across the snow. Dogs barked. A guard shouted her prisoner number into the... Wanda didn't run. She didn't hide. She simply walked, steady, determined, back toward Block 5, where dozens of women now waited inside, breathless with hope and fear. Because word had begun to spread. A whisper carried from block to block. She did it. She beat them. One of the rabbits outsmarted the doctors, and in a place built to break women, that whisper mattered more than anything. Wanda reached the edge of the block just as two guards rounded the corner. She looked at them, not with defiance, but with a quiet, unshakable calm. If they killed her now, so be it. The evidence was safe. The truth was hidden. The women knew where to find it when liberation came. The guards shouted. A rifle was raised. Boots thundered toward her. And in that moment, that single moment, Wanda allowed herself the smallest smile. Because she had already won. Underscore, 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 underscore. Wanda Półtawska survived Ravensbrück. She survived the experiments, the torture, the starvation, the hunts, the impossible nights. And when the war ended, she testified against the Ravensbrück doctors, including Karl Gebhardt, at the Nuremberg Trials. Her words helped condemn them. The truth she saved became part of the very evidence that exposed the atrocities committed there. The rabbits became symbols of endurance, women who survived the unthinkable, who held on to their humanity when the world tried to strip it away. And Wanda lived a long life after the war. A writer, a doctor, a woman who carried her scars with strength, a witness who refused to let the world forget what women endured and what they overcame. In Ravensbrück, the guards mocked them as useless, fragile, weak, but in the end, the women survived what soldiers could not.